Onoroa Idokpolo, the Human Capital Development Consultant, joins us now as we review the acting president's visit to the Niger Delta. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, the acting president making that tour, he also did speak with the governors in those states, including the Rivers State governor. We didn't get to see that. But this particular trip to the region, you have been involved in trying to see how peace could also return to the region.
True.
How important do you think this visit is in the scheme of things?
I think it's very important. I think it's something different. I think that this approach, the phrase that has been on my mind ever since has been, what can we do differently? This trip is something that is different. The highest echelons of power has gone to meet the people to say to them, we recognize that you guys are important. We recognize that your needs are important. Let's have a conversation. So yes, to the extent that these trips have taken place, yes, I think we should compliment the federal government for this.
But other than this trip, I mean, you think that the people will be really, much as yes, there'll be some optimism.
Yes.
But what if people tell you, look, we've had talks several times, there's several reports in terms of what needs to be done.
And that's why I said up till this stage, we compliment them. Now, the next question then becomes, what's going to happen after the talk? At which point will the tire hit the ground? All right, so one would expect that after all of this, government will come and then say to us, okay, so we've had this series of conversations. These are, immediate term, short term, and long term. All right. The idea now is that these conversations has given the government a bird's eye view of what the people themselves want. So ideally, therefore, whatever the government is going to be suggesting or proposing to do would have in it the expectations of the people. So the sooner we start to see things happen on ground, the better for us.
This whole situation is polarized along party lines,
yes,
as we saw, especially in the Niger Delta. You know how volatile that place has been over the past 40 years.
Okay.
How can we separate politics from dividends of democracy in this situation?
I think a lot will have to do with how the government itself carries on. All right? Like you said, there's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of, we've been here before. But if government begins to take steps that convey, trust, steps that would give the people confidence, at some point, the people will overtake the politicians. All right? So for me, I would say that what the government does will go a long way to see if, of course, politicians by their very nature would try to hijack. All right? But if the government is, altruistic, if it's really doing this for the good of the people, at some point along the way, the people themselves would take over the initiatives and they would drive it.
Do you think the people and the politicians are in sync of what the Niger Delta needs?
I doubt it. Unfortunately, our politicians are really about themselves, unfortunately. I mean, otherwise, you've had the Niger Delta, ministry, you've had NDDC. I mean, politicians have been in power for this long, and here we are. So clearly, the needs cannot be the same. So, and that's why I'm happy that the government is talking to the people themselves. All right, right from the youth, the community leaders, the traditional leaders, and all the way up. The different stratas of that community have been engaged. Yes, the needs of the people are at variance. The politicians just want money for themselves. There could be one or two of them who would like to see something noble done, but for the large part of them, I think it's just about themselves.
The problem has been pointed out by some comments, some commentaries that have been making the rounds, is that the Niger Delta leaders seem to be the problem and are not allowing the development to adequately take effect, as it were. Do you share those views?
Actually, my position is to say, again, going back to what I said, what could be different? For example, imagine you had an NDDC that had the youths, that had the community leaders on board, not just government appointees. All right, an NDDC that had the youths, the government leaders involved, an NDDC that had the community part of the panel that will give this contract to this fellow. What you're going to then find is that nobody's going to disturb them, because the same people who gave the contract, because they were they're going to go back and tell their people, hey, listen, if we do this, then your land can would appreciate, you can make more money. If we do this, then you don't need to do this anymore. So I think that now for the government, I would say to the government, don't take sides. As much as we know that the politicians are who they are, let us, because they are also, they're stakeholders. All right. So what you want is to get all the critical stakeholders on the same page. That's what you need to do. If you despise one for the other, the guys you've left out will create problems for you.
How would that work?
Okay.
When, for instance, this last visit of the Vice President to Rivers State had, the first meeting was more or less, it was turned into a party thing. The first one, they said it was PDP, the second one was APC. Yeah. So how would that work when it looks as if the parties are at loggerheads and the people are torn between where do we look?
Oh, it's easy. So the government says, for example, we want to do X, Y, Z in Rivers State. All right? And now the government knows who is who. Government has met with the youths, they've met with the community leaders, they've met with the militants, the ex-militants, all the different strata of the Niger Delta. The government has, if you like, their phone numbers. So the government can then decide to say, you know what, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and we want you representing the ex-militants, we want you representing the politicians, we want you representing the community leaders to come together. This is what we want to do, this is how much we're going to spend, this is how we're going to do it. Now the moment you do that, and this is made public, it is the opaque nature in which things are done in Nigeria that makes it look as if, things cannot be done. If this is done, if you're following what's happening in the United Kingdom, the government is saying to the people, this is how we intend to leave Europe. There are no secrets, okay? So if our government will say, this is what we intend to do in the Niger Delta, X is representing the ex-militants, Y is representing the politicians, Z is representing the traditional rulers, together, dear Niger Delta people of whatever local government, this is what we intend to do. We have released 10 naira. 10 naira should get this road from 0 to 5 kilometers, all right? So you keep an eye on it and let's know what's happening. It is the opaque nature, all right, whereby we don't really know what is happening. We're not sure who's getting what. And once you have that kind of situation, then all these other things you've spoken about will begin to thrive.
The elders came out with a roadmap in the Niger Delta, saying that they came out with actually 15-point agenda that they want the government to do for them, some of which includes having the oil majors have their headquarters back in the Niger Delta away from other places where they are, and also getting some of their youths employed in those establishments. Do you foresee that the federal government's recent moves in the Niger Delta will override some of those demands that they initially made?
Those demands in themselves, private concerns. The IOCs are private concerns. And that takes me to another point of the Niger Delta in itself needs to do a rethink. There needs to be some level of retrospection on the people's part, all right? Because if you think about it, yes, Nigeria is, it's not as it should be, but billions of naira have been given to Niger Delta governors and people to develop their land, and they haven't done so. So there's a bit of, let's talk to ourselves and say, you know what, guys, we can't continue like this. Okay, so I would say that, there is a level of value orientation that needs to be done. Otherwise, we're not going to get there.